everybody. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to the licensing subcommittee today. If we can just start off with the protocols that I emailed everyone. So only speak when invited to by the chair. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand and direct all communication via the chair. Please ensure that your mics are muted when you're not speaking. When speaking, please be succinct and do not exceed the allocated time frames. If referring to any written submissions, please refer to the specific page number in the agenda pack. Any new evidence can only be submitted at the discretion of the chair and the agreement of all parties. If you're having technical difficulties, please use the chat function to alert the meeting or dial in using the details in the invitation. Please do not use the chat function for putting formal questions to the subcommittee. Any persistent disruptive behaviour will result in removal from the meeting. Once the application has been considered, any remaining parties will be asked to log out of the hearing. Please do so promptly so that councillors will have the opportunity to deliberate and make a decision. Each party will be notified of the decision within 5 working days. However, if you contact the licensing service the following day, you will be given a skeleton decision. If we can go to the first item on the agenda, can we elect a chair, please?
Thanks. I would nominate Councillor Smith to chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Virginia Thomas. And welcome everyone to today's licensing meeting, Committee E, Thursday the 8th of September at 2 o'clock. Amanda, you want to come in very briefly, yeah?
Yes, Chair, I wanted to suggest that because we have a lot of parties, and we will need to take at least the minimum of at least an hour on each, that maybe you could allow the second and third items to come back in an hour's time, or sort of a bit later, to save them, because also you have quite a number of people on the screen. You can't see everybody if everyone's still here. So it's just a suggestion, Chair. It's entirely at your discretion. Thank you.
No, I think that's a good idea. If you agree, Councillor Virginia Thomas, if you're happy with that.
Yes, that would be good.
Okay, so I mean, we could say for items 7 and 8, well, certainly 7. I mean, there's probably no reason why 7 and 8 couldn't come back together, I don't think. So 7 and 8 come back in, I don't know, 45 minutes maybe? Would that be good? Is that acceptable to everyone? Just nod your head so I can see roughly that people are happy with that. So 45 minutes then. And, you know, if you have to wait a bit, you know, to get going.
Chair, sorry to interrupt. What about the third application? I would suggest if they come back like in another hour or
number 8.
Yeah, for number 8, yes.
Okay, so 7 come back in 45 minutes and then 8 come back in an hour?
In an hour, that's right.
Yeah? Is that okay with everyone? Yeah?
Thank you.
It just saves you, saves all the David, you look a bit confused.
So 45 minutes and then 3 o'clock for item 3. Is that what? Or are you saying 1 hour after the first 45?
I'm saying 45 minutes from now for number 7, and then an hour from now for number 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Probably to say 3:30 so that it's clear. If we can ask the second application if they can come back at 3. That makes things easier rather than 45 minutes. And the other application at 3:30. That makes sense. Yes.
All right.
May I ask a question?
Yep.
Sorry. Just to be clear then, for BlackRock number 8, we'll come back in 1 hour. Yes.
Come back at 3:30.
3:30. Okay. Got it. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. All right.
We're getting there slowly. So 3 o'clock for number 7, and that's Shoreditch High Street, 233 Shoreditch High Street, and 3:30 for the BlackRock rooms. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, brilliant.
Thanks.
Excellent.
Okay.
So if everyone could mute, that would be useful so we don't get any kind of feedback and stuff. So yeah, we'll just go through very briefly. I like to do this at the start, just brief introductions. So I'm Councillor Smith. I'm the current Chair of Licensing, and I'm also a Councillor in Stoke Newington Ward. Councillor Fajana Thomas.
Thanks. I'm Councillor Susan Fajana Thomas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Amanda?
Good afternoon. I'm a solicitor supporting members this afternoon. Thank you.
Fantastic. And David?
Good afternoon. I'm David Tewett. I'm team leader, licensing and technical support, making representations on behalf of the licensing authority this afternoon.
Thank you very much. And Rabia is our licensing officer. You've already heard from her. So thank you, Rabia, for that. George, do you want to come in and just say who you are, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. My name is George Walker-Reich. I'm the Environmental Protection Officer objecting to the application.
Fantastic. And then I have Sergeant Ryan, I believe.
Hello, Chair. I'm not actually here for this item, but I'm going to remain and observe. If that's all right with you.
Okay. Is it Gary who's doing it?
I think it's PC
Amanda
Griggs. Griggs.
All right.
Hello, Chair. It's myself, Amanda Griggs. I'm the police licensing
okay.
officer here for this one.
Okay. Thank you for that. That's good. And then I have a Gary on here. Could you introduce yourself, Gary?
Oh no, I'm the barrister in the light bar, the Shoreditch High Street. I'm just going to mute and turn off my video, but I'm not involved in the first matter.
Thanks very much. And we have Corinne. Is Corinne there? Hello? No. Let's go to Oliver then.
Hi everyone.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay, if you could just introduce yourself, Corinne, please.
Yes, I'm here.
Yep. Are you? What are you?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Are you? What's your here? What's your capacity? You're here.
Yeah, for the BlackRock.
Oh, for BlackRock. Okay, so you need to come back at 3:30, Corinne.
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
Thank
brilliant.
You.
Yeah.
I don't know how to leave, but
well, you just leave and just come back on, I presume. Oliver.
Hi everyone. I'm Oliver Parker. I am co-founder and director of Great Beyond Brewing Company.
Brilliant. Thank you, Oliver. And I have Rob.
Good afternoon, Chair. My name's Rob Edge from Licence Leader Limited. I'm the agent acting on behalf of Great Beyond.
Okay, thank you very much. And then I think finally we have John.
Hi, Councillor, or Chairman, actually. I'm John. I'm a co-founder and managing director of Great Beyond Brewing Company.
Okay, and did I get Darren? Did I get Darren at all? Is Darren on?
Yes, hi. We're light bar. We've just muted, if that's okay.
Okay, all right. So yeah, so all those people. I mean, essentially, I've only got an iPad here, so if I've missed anybody, apologies, because I've only got so many people on my screen. But all those that are not relevant for this, please just turn your camera off. And all those with cameras on, I will be dealing with. Fantastic. Okay, so let's go through the agenda. So we've had the election of chair. Any apologies for absence? None received my end.
Our colleague Nicholas Walsh won't be able to join us today.
Okay. If that could be noted, please, that would be great. And then item 3, declarations of interest. I don't have any myself. Councillor Fajana Thomas.
No, Chair, thanks.
And agenda item 4, we have minutes of previous meeting. There are no minutes for consideration today. And then we move on to item 5, which is the hearing procedure. Amanda, would you like to run through the hearing procedure? Is that okay? Do you mind? I mean, I don't mind doing it.
No, that's absolutely fine. Thank you, Chair. Just bear with me. Right. Sorry. So Sorry, apologies, Chair. 1 minute. My document. Found it. Right. Sorry to keep you, Chair.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. The hearing procedure should be in the bundle of documents, or if online, you should be able to access this. It's the licensing subcommittee hearing procedure. Step 1 is we've already had the appointment of the chair and introduction. Step 2, the licensing officer sets out the report and the details of the application. Step 3, the applicant's case. The applicant will present their case in support of their application. They will have 5 minutes in which to do that. Step 4, the responsible authorities will, the chair will invite the relevant responsible authorities to highlight the reasons for objecting to the application as contained within the report, and that should take 5 minutes. Step 5, other persons. The chair will invite other persons in attendance to present their case, highlighting the reasons for objecting or supporting the application as contained in their written submissions, and the time for that is 5 minutes. Step 6, discussion. The chair will structure and lead a discussion on the information presented, enabling the subcommittee members to clarify any points raised and asking questions if necessary, and the time for that is 15 minutes. Then there will be closing remarks where the chair will ask responsible authorities or other persons, the applicant and the licensing officer, if they have any final comments to make. Those comments can only be in relation to the issues raised during the discussion. These remarks should be brief, and that 10 minutes is allocated for that. The final step is step 8, when the licensing subcommittee's members will have the final opportunity to seek any clarification on any points raised, following which the chair will conclude the discussion, and 5 minutes will be allocated for that. Step 9, the members will then withdraw and make their decision, and parties will be notified of the decision in due course. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Amanda. Is that clear to everyone? Everyone happy with that? Fantastic, great stuff. Okay, so we'll just move swiftly on to agenda item 6, which is 416 to 418 Union Walk. And if I could ask the acting principal licensing officer, please, to outline the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The first item we are going to consider for this afternoon is for a premises license under Section 17 of the Licensing Act 2003 for 416 to 418 Union Walk to authorize the supply of alcohol for consumption on and off the premises from 11 to 2300 Monday to Sunday, as stated within the report. Representation remains from licensing, police, and environmental protection. We have received additional information from the applicant, and this document has been circulated. I have nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair.
Yep, thank you very much for that, Suba. And now if I could invite, please, the applicant's agent, Rob Edge, to present your case in support of the application. And Mr. Edge, you have 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair. Acting for the applicants, I've given regard to the representations made against the application, the licensing objectives as set out by the Licensing Act, the Council's statement of licensing policy, as well as the guidance issued under the Home Office Section 182. Mediation. Licensing committee panel hearings are expensive and time-consuming for the licensing authority, objectors, and applicants. If it can therefore be avoided, that would be in the interest of everyone. Mediation by licensing authorities is becoming increasingly a popular occurrence. Mediation brings together objectors and applicants in order to find a way forward. Sometimes conversation and dialogue can dispel misunderstanding and result in objectors withdrawing their objections. I, along with the applicants, have attempted to mediate with those who have objected on numerous occasions. The applicants have met with both the police and environmental health at site meetings at the premises and had very positive dialogue. There are 8 responsible authorities, and only 3 of these have chosen to object. Additionally, the 3 that have objected cite the potential for public nuisance in the form of noise to residents, and yet there are no resident other persons objections. The Section 182 guidance tells us that each responsible authority will be an expert in their respective field, and in some cases, it is likely that a particular responsible authority will be the licensing authority's main source of advice in relation to a particular licensing objective. For example, the police have a key role in managing the nighttime economy and should have good working relationships with those operating within the local area. And the police should usually, therefore, be the licensing authority's main source of advice on matters relating to the promotion of crime and disorder licensing objective. However, any responsible authority under the 2003 Act may make representations with regard to any of the licensing objectives if they have evidence to support such representations. It remains incumbent on all responsible authorities to ensure that their reps can withstand the scrutiny to which they would be subject at a hearing. The applicants are extremely passionate about hospitality and have invested time, money, and passion into making this a successful and high-quality venue. The investment to date is almost £500,000 into this venture to make it something special for their patrons and for the local community. They intend to employ approximately 11 local staff, in addition to those involved in the extended supply chain. The refurbishment is a complete affair, transforming a once dull and unsightly set of buildings into a beautiful focal point that people will talk about long into the future. The licensing of this premises is something that's been taken very seriously by the owners.
1 minute.
They could have submitted an application themselves. Instead, they have chosen to employ a seasoned licensed consultant and to work alongside all of the responsible authorities. I strongly believe there is a robust operating schedule and a full range of policies and procedures to support the application and to support a well-run establishment. The hours are less than other local premises and in line with the statement of licensing policy core hours. The applicants will always demonstrate due diligence in all it does to uphold the licensing objectives, and it's in their interest to work with responsible authorities and the local community. The following documents and policies are in place in order to uphold the objectives and demonstrate due diligence: a noise monitoring plan, Challenge 25 policy and signage, refusals log, DPS authorization form, staff training and operations manual, customer signage, a dispersal plan, decibel meters for usage both inside and in the garden area, reduced hours and restricted numbers for the outside areas, and strict control over the smoking area. In respect of concerns over noise, this is a craft ale bar where the only music will be low-level incidental background music, which is, however, unregulated until 2300 hours by the Live Music Act 2012. There is a strong management team for the premises who will always consult with responsible authorities and be fully accepting of the advice they receive. Almost finished, Chair. We have, during the whole 28-day consultation period, contacted responsible authorities and tried to work with them to try to find a middle ground. It has been slightly difficult, and we believe we have always tried to be accommodating, offering site visits and asking for the opportunity to talk through the application operating schedule. My final bullet points are: there are no resident objections. Only 3 responsible authorities have objected. There is no evidence presented to support the objections. The hours are in line with core hours for the policy. Site visits have been carried out by the police and environmental health, but not by the licensing authority. Additional policies and procedures are in place, and the premises does not fall within a cumulative impact zone. That concludes my presentation, unless you have any questions for me, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like any points of clarity for you, Councillor Vijana Thomas, at this stage?
Thanks. I think the only point that I want to make, the representative have stressed the fact that there was no other person's objection to this application, and just to say why there are no other person's objection to this application, there are objections that we cannot accept because it was outside of the timing. And when we start the discussion stage, I would like to find out from the applicant what level of engagement they have with the community. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Edge, you can hold that for the discussion period. But I would just like, I've got a couple of points of clarity. The capacity of the venue inside, I don't think we've had a number. And also it mentions that the capacity for the front and rear will be determined by a fire risk assessment. Has that been done, and how did you come up with those numbers you've offered up there? 15 at the front and 40 at the rear. And then finally, my last question is, how far away are you from the residence block?
Okay, Chair. After talks with both environmental health and with the police and the site visits, we came to an agreement that the capacity for the front would be 15 persons, and that the rear was reduced to 30 and 10 in the smoking area.
Okay, and what about the inside?
The inside is subject to a fire risk assessment, which will be carried out.
And any rough ideas, sort of roughly what you're thinking?
Freibergen has an approximate figure.
Yeah, we have we only have space for seating for about 80 people.
Did you say 80?
80 seats, yeah, is the number of seats. And but we plan to have the risk assessment performed in the next few days. Really, we've reached out to a number of responsible third parties to do that for us.
Okay, Councillor Vijana Thomas, you want to come in? Thank you for that, John.
Thanks. You just to come in on that point around capacity, both within the premises and outside. So my understanding is, in your application or in your submission, you said that would be based on fire assessment, and at this point, you haven't provided the the licensing authority with those information. So what we are doing today, or what you are expecting us to do, is to make decision based on these assumptions. I mean, the figures you've given us.
Yeah.
Is that the position?
No. The position is that was within our initial application, which is almost 6-7 weeks ago, since which time the fire service have visited. In conversations with the applicants, they agree that they think an approximate number of 80 is a safe working capacity, but it would be subject to a full fire risk assessment. The reason the full fire risk assessment wasn't carried out was because we were continuing with the mediation with both environmental health and the licensing authority. So actually the owners didn't want to pay the money for that assessment and then find they had to have it amended afterwards. But we'd be quite happy to have a condition on the license that says the capacity will be dictated by the fire risk assessment.
Thanks for that clarification.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, I'm just writing that down. Okay. Right. So you didn't answer the question about how far away these areas are from that residential building in meters, roughly.
I'm going to ask John to answer that one, if I may, please, Chair.
Yep.
So the nearest point because we plan to position the outdoor seating area as far away from the residential buildings as possible. And actually, when Rob mentioned previously that we plan to install decibel meters, we plan to install one in the rear garden area at the closest possible point to the residential building, actually. And so a few things to note about the distance from the residential buildings. So firstly, if you look from above on Google Maps, for instance, it looks closer than it is because the buildings themselves begin at height. They are 1.5, 2 stories up. There's actually parking for vehicles, and then there's a large terrace on one side, and then the buildings are, I think from the closest point to the seating area to like where an actual apartment or like where a flat actually is, I would estimate it's something like 15 meters, something like that, probably from like where the seating area, the closest point in the seating area to the building is probably 15. Does that sound right, Ollie? I regret not having measured this in advance, but it's 15 to 20 meters, I would say. And but there is a height difference. We plan to install large, I actually have a statement that I prepared that goes into a little bit more detail, but we plan to install 2-meter tall hedging to encircle the seating area to provide both sound and privacy barrier to control noise and to ensure that the residents themselves have additional privacy.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so are we happy to move on then? To the next one.
My question have not been answered around, was there any engagement with immediate neighbor or community?
Yeah, in addition to the blue notices that were there were numerous occasions when either Oliver Parker, John Drybergen, or Nick Walsh, the 3 owners, were approached by residents that surround the premises, asking what was happening, when's it happening, what kind of a place will it be, and in general, although that's not an actual poll, most people were happy and quite content when they heard what it was going to be and how it was going to be run.
Additionally, we've spoken with the building manager of the property development company to our rear and the CEO of the property development company. And I personally have spoken to over half a dozen residents, and I think similar number probably for my colleagues. So I think we've had a lot of positive, I think I've only received personal, obviously it's anecdotal and probably sample bias, but I've only heard positive feedback from local residents, although I understand why people might be concerned given the initial application blue notices that sort of encircle the property. We've obviously amended our proposed operating hours. We've in an attempted mediation process, which never seems to have been reciprocated in terms of the willingness to engage actually by the licensing authorities, frustratingly. But I would understand why if you read those blue notices, you might be a little bit concerned. If you actually meet and talk to us, I think we allay those concerns very quickly because the actual vision we have for the businesses is very reasonable, actually. So,
okay, thank you for that. I'm going to invite now. Are you happy with that answer? Yep. So I'm just going to invite the first responsible authority, which is the Environmental Protection Team. So George, if you would like to present your representation in objection to this application, please. You've got 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone. I've got a few points to go through. I visited the premises. I did all the risk assessment as required, and I've got a few points to present. Number one is noise from patrons at the rear of the premises. I had a look at the area. The back is overlooked by 3 tall residential towers. As the gentleman said, is roughly between 10 to 15 meters away from the nearest residential block. Now, sitting at the back will cause a tunneling effect. In acoustics, that is what we say. The voices bounces around the hard surfaces, and these blocks are 15, 16 floors up. So unless there's a roof, 2-meter fence is not going to stop the noise going upwards. So residents will be disturbed. I did suggest to say the best way of dealing with the back is to kind of look at what NTE has done, Nettle House. You need some kind of acoustic temporary structure at the back whereby it absorbs the noise, contains the noise within that place so that there's no tunneling of the noise bouncing backwards and forwards. When people have had a bit of alcohol, they're normally louder than normal conversations. So even if you have only 10, that's gonna cause a lot of reverberation. The hard surfaces, when sound hits the hard surface, the energy that goes, the energy that bounces back, it increases by about 3 decibels already. So to try and avoid such tunneling effect on the residential blocks, they need to consider installing a temporary structure which absorbs the noise and contains it within the temporary structure. So what we agreed was they're going to discuss it and get back to me. I don't think I got anything back about that. Point number 2 is the number of customers at the back. We did discuss this. 40 is a little bit too much. I asked them to consider 2 issues. Either consider restricting the time, i.e. reduce the times that they want to use the back, maybe from midday to 6 p.m. as a start, or reduce the numbers. I was advised that they would discuss it and get back to me. I haven't officially got any outcome of that. The duration of use, I specifically asked what time will you start to use the back and what time will it end? I didn't get the start time, but I got the end time that it finishes at 10. So duration is a big factor in this. I personally would think using the back, if you're minded to grant it, midday to probably 6 p.m. as a start would be a good start. The third point is smokers at the back. What I was told is that they need 10 people smoking at the back rather than at the front. And that's going to be an issue on top of the numbers that they want at the back. So that is again an increase in the number. Therefore, my suggestion was we only use people to smoke at the front, because the front is shielded, that arch shields the noise from the residential blocks. So it would not necessarily go straight on. It depends and might not affect the people up there. The back door, I looked at the glazing. At the rear, they got a single glazing. And I asked if they could update the glazing of the windows as well, because if you have 80 people inside and you have 30 at the back, that's going to be a lot of noise. Therefore, they may consider improving on the glazing. And secondly, when the premises is open and the back door is left, you can imagine noise from people at inside plus noise from people outside radiating outwards. So they need to consider probably an acoustic lobby by the back door to kind of minimize the noise escape from inside the building going out. Music, I was told that the music would be played at background level, which is okay. The issue of live music, they say they're not going to use amplifiers.
Yeah, 1 minute, George.
They said they're not going to use amplifiers. I've got questions around that. If they're going to use amplifiers, then there's a problem. Coming to the front, 15 customers, I think, is manageable, plus the number of people smoking, plus the building obviously will shield the noise from going to the back. The number of people smoking at the front, a maximum of about 10. So those are my comments, but the biggest problem is the noise escape from the building going back outside and the noise from the people seated at the back. Unless there's a temporary structure to contain the noise, the tunneling effect will cause a lot of problems in the flats high up above. Thank you.
Thank you very much, George. I'm going to bring you in, Mr. Rob, Mr. Edge, just very briefly.
Okay, Chair. It was just to clarify a point when George had said that we hadn't got back to him. Annex H to the documents lodged by me, which are in the supplementary pack, was the email sent to the licensing authority, the police, and to George on Monday the 5th, where we laid out the change of numbers and hours for the use of the garden.
Yeah, George, did you get sight of that document?
Sorry, Chair, I think it's my mistake. I might not have read it. Sorry.
Okay, because it is in the pack. I've got it here on my phone.
Thank you,
Chair. Sorry, Chair. Does that the document about the use of the rear, the recommendation around space installation, that document hasn't got all of those. It talks about numbers, but not what the environmental officer have mentioned in terms of his recommendation.
Yeah, I agree, because I've read it.
Yeah, so it hasn't.
If I could just clarify, though, Chair, those were points discussed with the applicant. I've tried through mediation through email, and there's been no response saying, can you give clarification on those points? I mean, we certainly would have gone back to them had we been asked formally. I believe from the applicants and conversations I've had with them, those were just conversational pieces during the site visit, not we need answers on these.
Okay, Councillor Padana Thomas, very briefly.
Let me, Chair, wait until the discussion.
Yeah,
time.
I think John and Oliver.
Minding of.
Yeah, if you want to hold on to some of the thoughts you want to present us with now, you can bring those up in the discussion. Is that okay? Just so we can move on. Yeah, just hold those thoughts, just write them down and bring them up in the discussion. That's all right, because we will be asking you about those recommendations and what you think of them and things like that. I presume we were going to be kind of talking about stuff like that. So just to move on next then to the police. So if I could ask PC Griggs to present your representation in objection to this application. And again, you've got 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Amanda.
Many thanks, Chair. Police initially objected to the application as submitted that asked for alcohol sales as well as live music recording, etc., till midnight all throughout the week. Since then, I know they've reduced the hours that they've requested to start with. Unfortunately, it wasn't until yesterday I could actually meet with the actual applicants themselves and have a look around the building. And once I actually got to speak to them, a lot of initial concerns I had were certainly allayed. In the meantime, I've also been contacted by numerous residents about concerns that they have. And again, perhaps if some of these conversations could have been had slightly earlier, some of their concerns would have been allayed just from the beginning. Some of their concerns centred around any traffic issues, disturbance from the chiller and the silos and brewing equipment at the back, disruption from its 7-day use and noise and smell of the brewery, and how the rear area is going to be segregated. A lot of those things were cleared up in the meeting that I had with them, with John and Oliver yesterday, down at the premises, and I think perhaps conversations before this week over some of this stuff would have been more fruitful and perhaps avoided us being here today. I'm relatively happy with regards to crime and disorder now and around the area. My only concern, as I say, was the noise effect to the residents, and that's where sort of George has his expertise. So I'm here just kind of supporting him in that respect, and hope to minimise any effect on the residents from now. And that's about all I've got to say at the moment. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. If I could bring in now the responsible authority licensing, Mr. David Chewett. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. My representation is at Appendix B within today's agenda. So essentially, I've made very similar representations on the grounds of noise. I talked about the planning status as well. I welcome the additional submission made by the applicant, and I do agree with what Mr. Edge has said, that he's been very accommodating and has made efforts to address the concerns that we have. However, I don't feel that these can prevent, unfortunately, incidents of public nuisance, and it is really because of the close proximity to residential premises, which I made reference to in my representation. So there are apartments at Long and Waterson, and there are also apartments, or the rear of apartments on premises on Kingswood Road. So as I say, my main concern is about noise from patrons using the outdoor areas, but also noise outbreak from internal areas, whether it be music, noise, voices, etc. I'm aware that in my rep, I talked about possible steps to mitigate any potential concerns, and we've received some of those now. But again, I just think that the noise issues potentially may be too great to overcome without this particular site going through a planning process, which I'll come back to. I did note in the additional submission on behalf of the applicants that they themselves make reference to there being no formal mechanism for controlling or evaluating noise, and I think that's a really key point. Similar to PC Griggs, I've received a number of emails, a couple of phone calls from residents in the blocks that immediately abut the site, expressing their concerns about the site. And the last thing I'll say just at this stage of today's business is that I did query in my representation the status of planning, which our colleagues in planning did provide a comment on that, and told us that there isn't a planning permission, or they couldn't find a planning permission for this particular site. What members are probably aware of with the planning process, there's that neighbourhood consultation, direct neighbourhood consultation by post, which the licensing process doesn't have. So then therefore the responses to planning applications can be very different to license applications. But as it's now clear that, or from planning, that there isn't a planning permission for this particular activity at this site, it just further adds to the concerns that I have. So, but I can talk a bit more about planning when we come back to that part in the discussion, and what the guidance says about planning, what the Home Office guidance and our policy says about planning. So I'll come back to that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. So any points of clarity, Councillor Janet Thomas, before we move into the discussion phase? Thank you, David.
Chair, I think we should just move to the discussion stages. Thanks.
Yeah, okay. Well, I suppose the obvious question then, really, from my point of view, is which has been expressed by the responsible authorities, is the kind of noise mitigation issues that George was talking about. And so the question would be, he mentioned installing a temporary structure. How do you feel about that? He mentioned about updating the glazing at the back of the property. Mentioned about the acoustic lobby. So these are structural changes. So the question is around those structural changes, just to start with. how are you feeling about that? And I don't know if John, you want to come in, or Mr. Edge, which one of you wants to answer that one?
I think John can probably come in, but what I would say is that we were asked during the period of mediation to alleviate the problems. Could we come up with a noise management plan, which we've done? Could we come up with a dispersal plan, which we've done? And could we reduce the numbers and the hours in the outside area, which we've done? In addition to those, as John said, we've added in the decibel meters, and that, like any venue, this venue isn't open and operating. And like most venues, it's not until you're open and operating that can you assess, where the glitches are going to be. And those would be addressed by the use of a noise management plan and by the decibel meters. And I think in my opening statement, I said, they've invested over £500,000 into this project. They're not going to risk, coming back before a committee over noise issues. They're going to show the correct due diligence in making sure that the use of the outside area is monitored closely and carefully, and work in collaboration with their neighbours. John will have to answer for, the elements of the structures and the pieces that George is talking about. But, George really had said in his objections that it was about the management of noise, and that, he requested a noise management plan, which we've complied with. I must admit, I'm a little bit shocked to hear about, acoustic structures and replacing glazing in the premises. But, I'll leave John as the owner of the premises to answer that.
Okay, before you come in, John, I just want to bring in Councillor Virginia Thomas, please. Thank you.
Let John answer the question, then I can follow up. Thanks.
Okay, John, do you want to deal with that one then?
Thank you, Chair. So we haven't received in writing or a formal recommendation to install any structures. But obviously that's what the mediation process is supposed to provide. And we felt like we were denied the opportunity to even have a mediation process with the lack of communication. However, I will say that we are already intending to install double glazing on the front and the rear of all three arches regardless, and that will help with noise and also emissions, obviously. And so that's something that that's already in our plan, and we've discussed installing these 2 meter tall hedging to create an enclosed seating area and limit the noise. Additionally, we've spoken to like I mentioned, the CEO of that luxury apartment building, and he agreed that our presence in the area could be a great thing, and as long as his concerns about noise and privacy are well managed. And we agree with that, and he also expressed dissatisfaction with our proposal to install the hedging, and even offered to split the installation costs. So I think we showed the engagement, and also he expressed dissatisfaction with that solution. I think with regards to installing an additional structure, I think we're open to that, but this is news to us. It would have been useful to hear this a month ago.
And what about the acoustic lobby, which is like a special door system, which is kind of it's like a vacuum kind of thing before you go in. Do you understand what that is?
Yeah. I see what you mean. So so it's more that these solutions could have been presented to us in writing at an earlier stage in the process. We did have the site visit with George, which that was very fruitful. Actually, it was very useful to hear his input, in particular with regards to he then also talked about the need to reduce the number of people outside, and he talked about installing some acoustics panels along the rear brickwork near the pedestrian access gate. And we are absolutely open to exploring these possibilities. I think we've also, this proposal, when we talk about 30 people and we talk about 10 p.m., our understanding was that a mediation process would allow us to have a bit of dialogue. And we sent across that proposal, and we never heard a response about, oh, well, have you considered 25 people, and have you considered 9 p.m. or 6 p.m. or installing a structure in response to our formal suggestion of restricting the capacity further. So it's just it would have been, we could have been avoided this hearing potentially if we were told this earlier.
Okay, thank you. Can I bring in Councillor Bajana Thomas? You had a question.
Thanks,
comment.
Chair. Can I just go to Amanda first? Both Mr. Edge and John were saying they've not taken action around the noise and environmental issues because they haven't got a written or document from the environmental protection officer. But my understanding and your understanding around the licensing objectives, prevention of public nuisance, that is part of as applicant to actually look into how public nuisance can arise from your premises, which include you identified appropriate steps. So I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, that we need to wait for the environmental officer to send you a formal document. It is a residential area. There are buildings where children are, talking about protection of children from harm. You need the environmental officer to tell you about that before any action is taken around that as well. Amanda.
No, I agree with you, Councillor Bajana Thomas, that they don't need to wait. They could have made inquiries with this. And also because they were preparing their policies and procedures, they would have had at that time the opportunity to look into what they could have done to do soundproofing or obtained any other noise prevention devices, etc. So there was the opportunity then. They could have put back their application to give them more time to sort these things out, potentially, but no, it's not the expectation that they have to wait to be told. That they can seek their own independent advice as well.
Thanks very much for clarifying that, because all what I can hear from both John and Mr. Edge is, oh, we haven't done this because we've not been told, or we haven't received or a document to that effect. And going back onto this, Chair, or in terms of I'm not clear in regards to John's answers around or it is clear that these premises, the rear garden, that's where the main issue will be because of the residential build blocks at the back. And the suggestion from George was around the installation, or the recommendation rather was the installation of whatever is called technically to prevent noise bouncing back. Is John saying if we're mindful to, if we're mindful to approve this application, that will be done and they will be happy for that to be conditioned? And the other thing is around the double glazing, even where there are no music, having a single glaze or window is quite difficult when you have music. And again, are they saying they will be happy to, if we're mindful to approve this, to put a condition of that into it? And my third point at this question at this point is, again, in terms of smoking, would that be agreeable if the smoking is limited to the front rather than the rear? Those are the things that I would like answers to, Chair. And the licensing or authorities mention the planning situation, while I understand that the licensing and planning regime as two separate things. I would like comment around the situation with the planning for these premises. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. So there's three components to that question. It's about the structure, about whether you're happy to have these conditions, about some of the structural elements, and then just the final one about the smokers at the front. So I don't know if John or Oliver or Mr. Age or whoever wants to come in and talk about that.
Yeah.
John.
Yeah, I want to firstly thank you, Chair, and also thank you, Councillor, for your question with regards to the public nuisance objective in the rear area. So firstly, apologies if I suggested that we required a sort of formal document from George, or that I didn't mean to imply that. What I meant more was that we've shown forward thinking and mindfulness of the licensing objectives with our plan to install the 2-meter tall noise barrier hedges and privacy barrier hedges, and the installation of the decibel meters, which wasn't something that was recommended to us. That was something that we just planned to do. And we plan to position these decibel meters as close as possible to the residential buildings for daily monitoring and logging, so that we know the noise that we're producing. Of course, the trains overhead are noisy and are closer to the residential buildings than our seating area will be. Which is something to just also bear in mind. But however, so the double glazing, I think we addressed that. That's something we're already planning to do. That's something that we are doing for both the front and the rear, to contain noise and also to contain energy to within the building. And with regards to a structure, I think we are definitely open to exploring that possibility.
Would you be happy for that to be conditioned, though? That's the thing. You know,
I mean, I would normally take Rob's advice on this, because I know that these are like legal technical terms, and I don't. Yeah. But go ahead, Rob.
If it's a condition based on your license, then you have to do it.
Understood.
Yeah. I think in fairness, Chair, the applicants would be willing, and a condition, providing, there isn't a restrictive element of the condition, that says, and the structure must be in place within 6 weeks, because they don't even know what the specification to meet George's requirement is going to be, and therefore won't know the cost of getting that done and getting it installed.
Yeah, and I think this is also an expense that we didn't budget for in our startup plan. So I think regardless, we're approaching winter now. We don't want to be heating the outdoor area and using all that energy to heat outdoor seating over the course of the winter. So this is something that we would probably look to install in the springtime, and that additionally would give us more time to get our operation up and running and to iron out any issues to do with public nuisance or any other licensing objectives that we adhere to. So I think that if we were to go the route of installing a structure as a condition to our license, it would probably be something that we would just take our time to make sure to do properly, and we would just avoid doing the install on like short notice, and we would take the time to spend the time with George and understand what the requirements are, and to have the installation done at a later date, and to open the outdoor area probably in the spring.
And what about the acoustic lobby?
When I talk, in terms of condition, and my suggestion would be for that condition to be before the operations, before anything happens at the rear. If that is so that it's clear, is when you settle can be in the next 2-3 years. If we are going to be putting a condition in terms of that the noise impact or the prevention of that are meant before the rear, or there's any activities at the rear of the premises.
Did you understand that, John? Nothing at the rear outside until a temporary structure would be in place.
might have. And just because we've clearly had a biased sample of like residents that we've engaged with who are positively inclined towards our business, doesn't mean that there aren't valid concerns that local residents might have. And we want to engage in a positive way with our community and with our neighbors. So if this is something that will allay the concerns of the relevant authorities, we take these objectives seriously, and we, yeah, of course, we would be happy with that as a reasonable compromise.
And the acoustic lobby, would that be similar?
I mean, honestly, I think I would, as a condition, I think, obviously, I'm not in favor of adding any. I think I would want to hear what George has to say about that, and also it depends on if it's necessary, right? If there are other ways that we can talk about imposing restrictions on our license, then yeah, like for instance, the 10 p.m. Cutoff time is something that we it's especially important for us on on a Friday evening or a Saturday evening, and obviously on a Sunday, on a school night, on a Monday, on a Tuesday, we'd be open to 9:30 or 9 p.m. or something like that as well. So it depends on like what the most balanced approach is that successfully manages to address the concerns that people have.
Yeah, George, do you just want to come in very briefly and just talk about the temporary structure to contain noise, and also the acoustic lobby situation, because obviously you're in Arches, so maybe installing a door like that might be physically restrictive, right? I mean, it could be tricky. I mean,
that's my concern.
And just the effectiveness really of the kind of structure that you're thinking of, George. If you could just give us an indication of the kind of thing that you're thinking of, would be useful. Have you seen anything like that operate before? Because obviously to contain noise, it's going to have to be a reasonably substantial building of some description or other structure. Do you want to come in, George?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The most recent one that is done that I gave the example is the NTE on Nettle House. They had a long balcony, and because it was in a vibrant area, whenever people are up there, would cause a lot of noise. So what they did is they got an acoustic consultant who designed it for them. It's not heavyweight, it's mostly glass, but it absorbs the noise within. Noise does not escape to the neighboring areas. That is the latest one. It's just a couple of months old, and they can go and have a look and see. So the noise complaints have completely stopped. The issue here is the tunneling effect can only be stopped if there's a roof above. The 2-meter fence will not stop the noise going upwards. So there has to be some kind of roofing which the noise hits and then it comes back down. And this is very common in the recent garden structures. Most people who are applying are actually going for that. There's another premises I'm dealing with, and they did exactly the same thing in their planning application so as to stop the noise. So that is a common thing that they need to explore. And going back, when I had the meeting a few days ago, I specifically said that has to be done. But then I was told that they're looking in the near future to do it. So it's not only today that has come to surface. When I did a risk assessment of the premises, I outlined all these. Okay. Now going back to the lobbies, the point I'm bringing this is, if there are 80 people inside, if they open the back door, the noise will obviously escape through the door. So there has to be some kind of mechanism, not necessarily an acoustic lobby, but a double door that you open one, the other one is closed. So the noise is trapped in between and cannot escape to the outside area. Alternatively, they can use the front. It's not very far walking around the front, maybe. It depends on how they want to run the place. I really shouldn't dictate, but my most concern is how do you minimize the noise escape through the doors?
Yeah. Okay.
If there's a better way of doing that, then I'm happy with that.
Thank you, George. Sorry, Mr. Edge. I've got Oliver wants to come in, and John, you had your hand up, but you've taken it down. Oliver, you're on mute. Oliver.
Using John's mic, we're sat next to one another.
You're on mute. Oliver, you're on mute.
It's on. Sorry, Oliver and I are sharing a microphone, so he sat next to me.
All right, go ahead.
The microphone's on now.
Can you hear me, Chair?
Yep, just about.
Okay, so I'm just want to go back a few days to when I met George. We did discuss the tunneling effect and the potential acoustic absorption panels, but we also discussed how expensive it was, and they wouldn't be possible immediately. So, and George understood that. And the final part of the conversation was, if we would agree to 25 to 30 people out back to 10 p.m, he would withdraw his objection the following day. And he didn't specify that we needed to come back with a response saying we've looked into acoustic sound absorption or any other structure. And to be honest, the structure part of the conversation was very fleeting and there was no emphasis on it. So,
but we actually would, as George said, we actually did internally discuss this as something, as an add-on that we would like to build anyway, because of the comfort of our clientele and also the sound, the privacy and the sound absorbing properties for the winter time. And again, we don't intend to necessarily have seating for the winter time anyway, because of the expense that it would take, especially this winter, with heating an outdoor seating area. So and because it's not something that's currently in our budget, we were talking about building a structure like this at a later date, regardless, just because of the way it would improve the area and also with the licensing objectives in mind. The reason we didn't necessarily include it in our initial sort of application is because we were concerned that it would then become, well, which now is something that we're talking about, it becoming a restriction on our license. But obviously it is something that we have already discussed and talked about doing, and that we just know it's something that is quite expensive to build, and we wouldn't intend to necessarily have customers out there during this winter anyway. So it would be something that we would look to install in advance of next winter. And we were thinking about beginning to have outdoor seating as things warm up a little bit in the spring for next year. The other thing about just the comments about having people go around, having people go around is a possibility, but I think that'd be noisier for residents because that gate is very, very close to residential buildings. And that's why we decided we didn't want to have that gate used for people to go around.
And Councillor Fatana Thomas. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Chair. To be honest, I think, Chair, I'm not too sure if you want to close the environmental mine. I've got other questions that are not on the environmental thing. If
I mean, I think we've investigated that quite intensely, I'd say. So go ahead.
Okay. So the other comment about food deliveries. Do you mind to comment on the food delivery number one? And the second one is around this live music that playing background music, live music without amplifier. How does that work?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. I'm happy to answer the question about the food deliveries first, and then I'll let Ollie answer the question about the music. But food deliveries, we have agreed on a partnership with Yard Sale Pizza, who are based locally. They're a local business. They're on Hackney Road, and they deliver their food by bicycle. So it's quiet and emissions-free.
Okay.
Be the only restaurant delivering to the premises.
That's correct. Yeah, and they also, I think their last orders are something like, what time were their last orders, Ollie? They close at 10 o'clock. So I think the last orders are probably something like 9:30 for a delivery. And the delivery is very short. It's 5 minutes from here, and they only deliver by bicycle.
And then just deliveries in general, with things that are coming in and out of the place. I did notice you placed a restriction on that as well, didn't you, in your documents? Is that right? Between 12 and 8 or something? No sort of deliveries of any sort between those times. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Cool.
Ollie, I think there was also the question about the music. So I think I'll let Ollie answer that because he knows more about that than me.
Yeah, regarding the music, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Regarding the music we're going to be playing, like the recorded music. It's just going to be ambient background music to sort of aid conversation to be at a very low level. Like if we're speaking like this, and if you need to speak louder than this, then the music will obviously be too loud. That's the way we see it. We want it to sort of just aid conversation. So yeah, and then with regard to the live music, we only planning to have a few performances, a maximum of 6 per year. That's what our license with the PRS currently says, and we're not even sure we're going to do that amount. It's just something that we might be interested in doing in the future. And there'll be no amplified instruments, and the only sort of acts are going to be local acoustic acts that we're planning to put on.
Yeah.
So,
I get it. Yeah, the idea would be similar to the background music. It would be atmospheric rather than like a performance per se. We were just aware that it was something we had to apply for a license for, and we have done the license with PRS already for this, and the license is for acoustic performances.
Yeah. One thing we haven't discussed is the kind of the interior of the building. You know, I don't know if George, if you had a chance to go in there and see what it's like inside. Is it quite you know, quiet in there, or what's it like?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The building is okay. The fabric of the building, apart from the glazing, because they are the walls are so thick, they would be able to absorb or contain the noise.
Okay.
So my only concern is about the glazing and the door.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I actually have another point on deliveries that I forgot to mention. So our local deliveries to like nearby accounts, so nearby pubs or whatever, will also be done by cargo bicycle. Again, it's because of our interest. Sustainability is a core value of our business, and we want, and we're also aware of Hackney's objectives with regards to travel and infrastructure, and there's so many great solutions with cargo bicycles now that there's no need for us to put emissions vehicles on the roads. And again, there's the noise pollution aspect of that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Zanatoma?
Thanks, Chair. It's just coming back to my question. I've not heard any comment around this planning situation that I asked.
Yeah. Yeah. So at the moment, in the document, you'll see that you don't have planning permission to do this. Have you decided to? I mean, you'll have to put in a planning application, and actually, with the new structure, you know, it'd be a good opportunity to put that in with the application as well. If that makes sense, right? So you do it at the same time.
Yeah, this is something that we've discussed, and actually, our strategy worked out right because of the point you've just made there, Chair. There's always, a difference of opinion. Should you do the license first or the planning first? Which comes first? There is no strict rule on which comes first, as long as both are done and that the timings and the activities marry up on both. We are aware that because it's a brewery, the planning consent is sui generis, because the tap room is ancillary to the brewery use within the building. And planning, a planning consultant has been appointed and has said, he's quite happy to wait until we go back to him with the final decision of today's hearing. And obviously the conversations with him now will be about, the windows, the acoustic lobby and the structure. And that will happen in very quick time.
Okay, great. And John, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Just another quick comment about the tasting room or the tap room that arches. So we're 3 railway arches. One arch will be the brewery proper, where the beer itself is produced. We have a middle arch, which will have a storage area where we're sat now. There's an office space. We're installing a little kitchen, and then there's the tap room space. But it's all actually one large sort of brewery. So the tap room itself has conditioning tanks in it, where the beer itself will finalize its conditioning process. We'll also use it when it's not in use for customers for dry storage. Obviously, space is at a premium in London, and so we'll use it for storing palletized dry goods, empty cans and labels and cardboard and things like that. It is. We know we need a premise license for it to be a place where we can serve alcohol, obviously. But the whole facility, when looked at holistically, is clearly a brewery.
Okay, Councillor Janet Thomas. And by the way, we've had 30 minutes on the discussion.
Yes, that I think we've heard. It's just to pick on what John said, and just to find out in terms of the facilities as he described. I want to check with him. Do you have with the brewery? Obviously, I don't know how you operate. Do you have vehicle coming in to pick up orders from the brewery within this space as well? And if that happens, from what time to what time do that happen? And following that, Chair, if you don't mind, I would like if the licensing authority, David Tweed, can comment on the planning issues that he raised in his submission as well. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, John, and then David.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor, for the question. So in terms of the deliveries, so we'll need to have. So firstly, we're a small brewery. We're not going to be a very large operation. So we're looking at production a couple of times per week. We're looking at deliveries during normal business hours, really. So we're not going to be a 24-hour operation or anything like that. We're looking at normal business hours for deliveries. And likewise, just to reiterate my previous point, our local deliveries to local accounts will be done primarily by cargo bike, which is quiet.
Yeah, great. And then David, if you could come in on the planning, please.
Our policy says what it says on policies. It's not something I would tend to dwell on much in a license application, and rightly so, because of what the Home Office guidance says about planning. That shouldn't be a rerun. The two regimes are separate, albeit linked. But I do think it's very, very significant in this case, just because of the nature of what's being proposed and what's being talked about. So we've heard about glazing. We're talking about acoustic lobbies, temporary structures, the distance to the residents, noise, and how that travels and how that could be bounced around, hedging. We just heard about deliveries, which is what a planning transport assessment would look at. But I just feel that we're kind of speculating a fair bit about how effective these things would be. If this had been through that planning process, a colleague, a planning officer from the planning service would be assigned the case. They'll go and make a number of site visits. They'd prepare a report. They'd consult internally. They'd expect, like I say, transport assessment, acoustic report. They'd look at the design. Obviously, that's not relevant to licensing considerations, but a lot of what they would look at is. So I don't think I just have concerns about this particular site, given the significance of what's being proposed. We're not talking about a premises that has planning permission with conditions on hours, for example, that the license is looking to go beyond. We're talking about use of this premises for activity which it doesn't have planning permission for at all, and what's being offered are measures which our colleagues in planning would assess whether they are effective or not. That for me is where I have significant concerns about what sort of measures are being offered to potentially mitigate any problems that might occur.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Edge.
Yeah. I just want to make the point that I think, given what Mr. Tuitt's just said there, he's almost running a preliminary planning meeting. We followed the Section 182 Home Office guidance by doing the premises license first and then the planning. And actually, you know, I think it's been evidenced in the meeting today that because George has talked about and requested, you know, the structure, the windows and the acoustic lobby, had we gone for planning first, we wouldn't have known about those because nobody's conveyed that in writing formally. And therefore, we'd have done a planning permission and we'd have been sitting here today saying we got planning permission, but you'd be saying then, yeah, but you don't have planning permission for the lobby or the structure. I think, you know, we have gone overboard on being accommodating and agreeing to having those as conditions within the operating schedule, and that planning should be allowed to take its own course based on the application that's submitted for a change of use for the tap room, albeit that that's ancillary and falls under sui generis. The only thing that planning may look at, as Mr. Tuitt rightly said, is the impact on traffic management plan and the impact on the hours granted.
David, do you want to come back?
Yeah, well, the guidance doesn't say anything about seeking a license first. It just says the two regimes should be separate. That's what the Home Office guidance says on planning, pushing that licensing should be a rerun of planning and vice versa, which is correct. And I'm not suggesting that this is a planning subcommittee at all. I'm not a planning officer. I'm not qualified as a planning officer. But what I am saying is my colleagues who are qualified as planning officers have not made any assessment of this site for this activity. And what's being proposed in terms of mitigating measures to promote the licensing objectives are measures that my colleagues in planning would assess, and they would assess the effectiveness of. And I feel that in this particular case, because that hasn't been done, that for me, in this particular case, not in every licensing case, but in this particular case, I have severe reservations about that in this particular case.
Just one final word, if I may, Chair.
Yep.
Is that it was an informative from planning. Planning were a responsible authority, consulted on the application, and they chose not to make objections because they know that we have to comply with planning and that we have to submit an application. Had they made an objection, this would be a different case altogether. I think that really summarises it, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fajana-Thomas.
Sorry, I just want to come in, Mr. Edge. I was on planning for 12 years. Planning will not make a comment to an application you haven't submitted because that will prejudice. They will see that. What comment would they want to make on a license application where they've not received planning application for the building? Whatever they say, is not that they just not want to, they're not interested in commenting. It's just because of the process. Just like what I said earlier on, you make the point that no resident, I'm glad John raised this, that a few residents have come up to him and with concern, and he has discussed with them. Of course, we've received consent from residents or around this application, but because we are following process, and whatever concerns residents have got, they've either send us email, send the licensing was outside of the consultation period. So they're not material objective today, but that didn't rule the fact that we've had residents who raised concern, and John himself have made that clear that residents have come up to him and he's discussed with them.
Okay, John.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's true that we've had many conversations with residents and overwhelmingly positive ones. I would just note that we put 4 blue notices all around the perimeter of our building as per what's legally required. And there was one, I think, 2 meters from the pedestrian access gate to the Long and Watterson building. So it's not like, and none of these objections were raised during the formal time period. So of course, if I believe, of course, there are emails that have come in that people are concerned. I understand that there are concerns, and we want to take the necessary steps to allay those concerns, and of course have the licensing objectives in mind at all times when it comes to an operation like this. But I would just note that despite the fact that these objections are immaterial because they weren't raised during the proper notice period, they are being brought up again and again during the course of this hearing, and it shouldn't. My understanding is that doesn't count as evidence, right? And this is an evidence-based process.
Yeah, Amanda.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know, Chair, if you want, through yourself, if you want to ask the applicant. I know they said that they actually put their notices around the perimeter of their property, but because these buildings, the residential buildings, are quite close to them, did they attempt to contact or communicate with maybe the building in some way to try and make contact with local residents, or if any other residents association or anything in the area to make them aware, of it, or did they put the notice on display in any other public place?
Yeah, thank you. John, you heard that, yeah?
I did hear that. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so we put the 4 notices all around the site. We also spoke to the building manager of Long and Watterson, and we've spoken to passing residents, and people are super curious. People love to see that there's like something going on, that they see that there are tanks being installed, and so of course people are approaching us and reaching out to talk to us, and we've spoken to local business leaders. I couldn't even count the number of conversations I've had with people in the immediate area, and I'll also allow, I don't know if Ollie or Rob, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, we're going to round up the discussion phase in a minute.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think it was the week after we got the keys to the premises at some point in June. I had a lengthy discussion with the building manager at Long and Watterson, and he did say, what sort of business are we going to be? Is it going to be a nightclub? Are we going to be having people here till midnight, 1 a.m. drinking? I explained the nature of our business, and he actually said that he thinks it will be good for the area, because a number of his residents have been mugged by drug addicts that frequent the street with a syringe and needle and nick their mobile phones off them and ask for their car keys. And he said, if we achieve what we want to achieve here, and there's extra lighting, security,
CCTV, foot traffic,
if we achieve that, then it will drive that sort of activity elsewhere. So he thinks it will be a good thing.
Okay, thank you. Just one last question from me. What was there before?
So we had so for a while there was a mechanics, like a car mechanics thing here, I think. Then there was Abel and Cole, the farm fresh sort of produce delivery company. Were here for, I think, a couple of years, but they mostly didn't use the site because they took over the site just before the pandemic, and as a result they had to shut down. And there was also a local, there was a company called Zetify who do cargo bike deliveries, and they were subleasing before us. But before that, for a long time, I think it was car repair, car mechanics, that kind of thing.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so we're going to conclude the discussion phase there. We've had 40 minutes, believe it or not. I mean, it's flown by. So, we've had a good discussion. So I just want very quick closing remarks, kind of, 30 seconds each, roughly, just from the responsible authorities and everybody else. So let's bring in PC, is it Griggs? PC Griggs? Do you want to just come with your closing remarks?
Yeah, so my concerns were regarding the residents at the back and that rear area. I've got no concerns about the actual operation itself in the front. So it was just that rear area, and I think we've discussed that quite fully now. So that's all I've got to say.
Thank you very much. And David, you want to come in?
Just I think you've heard everything from me, councillors. Just to welcome the additional submissions that have been put forward by the applicant, and clearly they're trying to accommodate the concerns we have, but my concerns still remain, and a lot of that is linked to the lack of planning permission at this site.
Okay, thank you. And George, 30 seconds for you. Hello, George.
Thank you, Chair. I've still got concerns about the noise escape at the back especially, and I would ask you to consider that in your deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then finally, Mr. Edge.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I won't take long. I'll just go through bullet points. The applicants are quite happy with conditions being added to the licence in relation to the structure, the replacement of windows, and, you know, a kind of, maybe because it's an arched doorway, a stud partition lobby that would mitigate noise breakout from within the premises.
Yeah, or a double door or something.
Yeah,
along.
yeah, just literally to cause so that there's one, as you say, a double door, so the noise doesn't immediately break when people enter and leave. Smoking to the front, that the outside area wouldn't be used until such time as the work is completed.
Yeah.
And then if I just go through a few bullet points, I think we've got a very strong, a very robust operating schedule. I think the fact that there was a 28-day consultation period with the blue notices and the newspaper advert, and no residents have objected. We think that the investment of £500,000 and the potential for 11 people to be employed at the premises is very good for the area. And as Oliver said earlier on, this will reduce crime within the area and will only improve the area by having a thriving business there. The policies and procedures that are in place are initial policies and procedures. So the noise management plan, the dispersal plan will be live documents. They'll be tested and worked on day by day, so that as either Ollie or John see something that isn't working quite right, they'll adjust those policies, come back to me, and we'll work to find a solution. I think that concludes, and I'd say thank you very much to everyone for their valuable time this afternoon, Chair.
Yep, and yeah, likewise, thank you to everyone for joining. So just you will be sent a decision. I'd ask you all to leave for this agenda item, all those involved. And a decision will be sent within 5 working days. However, a skeleton decision will be available from the licensing service from tomorrow morning. So again, thank you for your participation. We've had a good discussion. We kind of know what the issues are, and we will go away and deliberate it. So thank you very much. And we're just going to move on now to agenda item 7, which is the new premises license for the Light Bar 233 Shoreditch High Street. And I would like to call, I don't know if people actually thinking about it, do people need a comfort break? Or are we happy to continue? Yeah, we'll just continue then. So agenda item 8, they were supposed to come back at 3:30, and it's 3:30. Well, it's 3:33 now. So maybe if agenda item 8 want to come back at 4, that would save you having to hang around. Okay, so we'll just crack on with item agenda 7 then.
Chair,
okay, so
have you double checked that the parties are here, etc.?
I'm presuming they are.
Okay, right. Okay.
Thomas, you had your hand up.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I believed, unless I'm incorrect, that Black Rock is agenda item 8. Correct?
Yeah. So you're due back now.
Which is so we are here at 3:30.
Yeah, you are, but we've gone beyond time. So if you could come back at 4, that'd be good.
So, okay. All right. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. That's fine. That's fine. No problem. All right. I'll see you then.
Sorry about this, folks. Sometimes these things overrun a bit. Okay, so let's move on to agenda item 7. Sorry. So if I could ask the principal licensing officer, please, to outline the report.
Thank you, Chair. The second item we are going to consider is for a premises license under Section 17 of the Licensing Act 2003 for the Light Bar 233 Shoreditch High Street for regulated entertainment, late night refreshment, and to authorize the supply of alcohol for consumption of and on the premises. as stated within the report. Deposition remains from the police and licensing. The applicant has submitted some additional information and this document has been circulated. I have nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. And if I could ask the applicant's legal counsel, Gary Grant, to present their case in support of the application. Mr. Grant, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. If you could be generous, perhaps, with 8 minutes, I hope I can then speak at a speed that's comprehensible to you and will save time in discussion.
Well, we'd like you to try and fit it in within 5 if you could.
All right, I'll do my very best. Let me just put my timer on. Right, this application upon which the future of this landmark building and 65 employees rests on your decision today. Those employees are mainly young, they're mainly local Hackney residents, and they have been mentored from the beginning to be promoted internally. There is an existing license, as you know. The existing license permits this premises to have licensable activities until midnight, with closing 30 minutes later. We seek a 90-minute extension of that. We seek an increase in capacity from 250 to 325, and to extend the time that drinks can be taken outside from 10 to 11 p.m. In short, exceptionally, there is a track record of some 14 years of this premises operating to 3 a.m. and not undermining the licensing objectives. I hope you've had the opportunity to read my written submissions, which are in the supplemental papers between pages 35 and 45. So I will just rely on those, but highlight some of those points. When it operated until 3 a.m. at 500 capacity, it operated as the light bar and effectively a nightclub. All of the evidence in this case, including an expert report from your former licensing sergeant, Guy Hick, that's within the papers between 118 to 123 of the supplementary papers, confirm that exceptionally this venue did not cause problems that added to the cumulative impact. Why? Because of its location. It is located on the very edge of your special policy area, which means that the overwhelming number of its customers turn right when they leave to go towards the transport hub at Liverpool Street and do not go into the special policy area. That's why the geography of this location is exceptional for your special policy area, because people tend to move away from the premises. This premises was previously threatened with closure some 12 years ago. Your mayor at the time, Councillor Guy Nicholson, as well as a local campaign group, did everything possible and successfully campaigned to keep the light bar open for public use. That is the purpose of today's application too. Sadly, the possessor of the 3 a.m. license, he died in 2014. Because of an administrative error, that license wasn't transferred. Had it been transferred, none of us would be here today asking for the extensions. The current operators, Morton Jensen and Darren Collins, took over the premises in 2019. They're online, they can answer your questions. They are long-standing Hackney residents, and their family and children live and are educated at your schools. They've invested everything they've got, some £2 million, into making the light bar a food-led success, and they've achieved it. They've done exactly what they suggested they would do when their original license was granted in 2019. They turned this landmark building into an asset for Shoreditch and its residents. They have been awarded, for example, at least listed among Condé Nast Traveller's best restaurants in London. They've been listed in the Michelin Guide, one of only 5 London restaurants this year to be listed afresh. They assured you, this subcommittee, in 2019, that the policies they had, the sort of venue they would run, would not cause issues. You made an exception to policy by granting them a license in 2019, and they have been good to their word. There have been 0 incidents of violence or disorder associated with this premises, as the police have confirmed. There have been 0 nuisance complaints from either your noise team or recorded by licensing or from residents. Indeed, your residents, particularly those in the tower block behind in Principal Place, are the significant customers of this venue. There is not a single, exceptionally, not a single resident has objected to this application, and you have a letter within your papers from Principal Places operators at supplementary page 47, confirming that the residents support this application for an extension because it is their favourite venue, the one they want open. The alternative, and what happens at the moment, is that people have to leave this venue artificially early. They do not simply go to bed with a cup of Horlicks. They migrate to other premises in the centre of your special policy area, to other venues, so they finish their night. We would prefer them to finish in our venue. Now, we don't simply ask for more here, and if I could just finish up for 30 seconds, we're offering further substantial restrictions on their existing license to counterbalance the additional time that they're asking for. Those further restrictions are, firstly, to impose a restaurant condition on the first floor of this premises, to include a minimum level of seating at the venue of 200 seats, and to insert a last entry time of midnight. That's important because this premises can now open until midnight 30. We're going to suggest a last entry time of midnight, which means not a soul will enter the premises any later than it's currently allowed to operate. They will simply be able to finish their night in our premises and go home instead of migrating into your premises. The wording of those additional conditions you'll find in my written submissions at paragraph 16. We say simply that your policy, as you know, is not absolute, and if there is ever a worthy exception, we suggest this is it, together with the additional robust restrictions that we are offering today. So I went just
Thank you very much.
6 minutes.
Yeah, you did well. 6:45 according to mine. So a bit of a compromise there. Thank you very much. Okay, so any points of clarity there, Councillor Jana Thomas, for this one?
Not at this point, if we can move on.
Okay,
Chair.
fantastic. So if I could call now and invite the responsible authority, the police, Sergeant Ryan, to present the representation objecting to this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it brief. Police have had several meetings and discussions with the applicant at this premises prior to today's hearing. And our concerns lie around the hours sought in the area that the premises is located in. Shoreditch as a whole has seen and continues to see a heavy footfall in the evenings, especially at weekends. And we're still seeing incidents of violence, disorder, including GBHs, more recently stabbings, fights, sexual assaults, alcohol-related antisocial behaviour such as urination and vomiting, and general disorder. There are huge police resources put into Shoreditch every weekend to control and react to these incidents. And there's no other area in Hackney that requires these sort of resources. So this should give you an idea of the problems and issues that we are dealing with every week in Shoreditch. Police concerns are additional hours of alcohol consumption here could lead to an increase in the problems we're already experiencing here. Although we have received several tens from the premises, only 2 have taken place in the last 6 months. So I think it's very difficult for us to get an accurate idea of exactly what impact the later hours would have. We have seen serious and violent crime happen in the immediate vicinity of this premises, although no crimes directly attributed to this particular premises. So we continue to support the hours as laid out in the statement of licensing policy. So it should be noted that the current premises license already has hours that are outside of the policy hours. I just wanted to seek some clarity on the additional conditions that have been proposed. The ancillary condition says except for pre-booked or corporate events. I just wanted a bit more clarity on that, whether a pre-booked event would be a birthday or a wedding. Will there be exclusive access only to these parties on the first floor? How will it be managed? Will there be additional security, due diligence? And could they be, how often would they be done? Could they be done on tens so that a 10 could be submitted to remove the ancillary condition? And the other condition, 200 minimum seats, is that across the whole premises or just in one particular area? And that's all from me. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, if Mr. Grant, you maybe just want to come back on those two questions, that would be useful.
Sorry, I'm just waiting. Forgive me if you see me looking at my phone, it's because I'm communicating with my team on a WhatsApp group. So I'm waiting for instructions. My understanding, but I'll be corrected if I'm wrong by Morton or Darren, who's on the line here, is that the first floor is often used for things like corporate bookings. So there will be a corporate reception. So the corporate events are usually for local businesses, and it's an extremely important part of their business. They couldn't do without it. There are also events held there where, I mean, a good example, Amazon, for example, have its head office there, often hire it out to use. And it would be the case that there will be, for example, finger snacks to eat, but not everyone, some people just have a glass of champagne, not everyone will eat. And that's why we can't have a wholly restrictive restaurant condition on it. Most of the time it will be used purely as a restaurant, but we need the facility that go beyond the temporary event notices to be able to have the corporate event, because frankly our bottom line relies on it.
Okay, great, thank you. And there was another question, wasn't there, Sergeant Ryan? It
Minimum seating, that's 200 seats for the whole venue.
For the whole venue, cool.
Yeah.
Great. Do you want to come back at all, Sergeant Ryan, on any of that?
No, that's fine, thank you.
No, and just Amanda, very quickly, that condition which has been kind of scribed by Mr. Grant, does it look okay to you, Amanda? Can you hear me?
Are you talking to me? Sorry,
Yep,
Amanda.
yep,
Yeah,
yep.
sorry. I wasn't sure if you were talking to the police officer. Sorry, apologies. Sorry, the condition that he was referring to.
Yeah, in regards to the corporate events and the kind of, using imposing a restaurant condition on the first floor only, but apart from corporate events.
Yes, I mean, I wasn't sure if he wanted to make any more representations about that, or if you were hearing more on that before.
Councillor Vijana Thomas wants to come in. You probably got a comment to make.
I think that's what Amanda just said. I wanted to say, can we wait, because I've got questions around that when we get to the discussion stage before we start asking whether that is satisfactory or not.
Okay,
thanks,
cool.
Chair.
Okay, so if we just move on to licensing now, David Stewart, if you could present your representation and objection to the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. My representation, I'll keep this brief also, but my representation is at B2 in today's agenda. So I make reference to the policy, so LP10, premises is in the special policy area within the Shoreditch, and it's that it's for the applicant to demonstrate that proposed activity will not add to the cumulative impact that's currently being experienced in these areas, or in this particular area. It's noted that the conditions 35 and 39, which are attached to the current license, are being sought to be amended effectively, or varied, if you like, by this new grant along with the hours. But I do welcome those proposed additional condition. But I do feel that maybe as we head to the discussion stage of this process, we'll be able to explore a bit more about how the applicant is proposing to demonstrate their policy requirements.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. So I think we can move into the discussion phase now. So Councillor Vijana Thomas, if you'd like to kick off, that'd be great.
Oh, thanks very much, Chair. I'll start from, I know Mr. Grant kept saying this is at the edge of our SPA, Shoreditch SPA, either edge or middle or center. This premises is within the Shoreditch SPA. I think that is one point to make. And like the licensing authority have said, I had a track record, good character, that all of those are not in itself sufficient in terms of or this application and the fact that it is within the SPA. And going into that, I've not seen or in details how this application have put to us that the additional hours, if we are mindful to grant additional hour for they've requested for, would not have negative impact on the cumulative impact in the SPA area. And the other thing that I want to ask again is in this document, there is this additional or capacity of 325 from 250 to 325, just to find out, was that because the premises have now been expanded, or is it still the same premises but with more people to come in? And the last thing is around the booking on this second floor we mentioned. I think it was said that this second floor would be used for booking and is not going to be a frequent thing. And I'm wondering, if it's not a frequent thing, then why is the applicant not agreeing to use these tents in terms of additional or as addition when they have booking for this second floor? I would be very concerned introducing full alcohols into that second floor space. But I'll stop there, and probably they can comment on those questions, Chair.
Yeah, I just want to stop you there. Just Rabia, I can see that you are looking a little bit uncomfortable. Are you okay? Do you need a break? Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. So, Mr. Grant, do you want to address some of those questions? I hope you managed to grab hold of some of those.
I did. Yes. There are primarily three of them. The first question is, are we in the spa? Yes, we are. I fully recognise that being in the spa is a bit like being pregnant. You either are or you aren't. We are. We're just in there. We are subject to the policy. But what is the purpose? What is one of the purposes of the spa? It's to prevent more people congregating in the central hotspot areas. Here, there is evidence. And if I could ask you please to turn to the supplemental papers at page 120. That is part of the report of your former licensing sergeant, Guy Hicks. And I'll pause there until you tell me when you've been able to bring it up on your tablets.
That's okay if you carry on, please.
I'll carry on. What he says is this: so Guy Hicks had a lot of experiences with this venue when it operated as a nightclub to 3 a.m. So he knows of that of which he speaks. And what he knew is that people would, on the whole, the vast majority of people, would depart from the venue towards Liverpool Street. In other words, take a right out the venue and away from your special policy area. And he evidences that in paragraph 5 of his report that's in the supplemental papers at 120. So if, when it operated until 3 a.m., the best evidence available suggests that most of the people departed away from your special policy area towards Liverpool Street, that is a reasonable evidential basis for you to conclude that is likely to happen also if you permit us to operate until 1:30 with a closing at 2 a.m. So that is the best evidence in this case as to what people do, and why we say, because we're on the edge of the spa in this case, it means we're not going to add to the cumulative impact, because this premises didn't add to cumulative impact even when it operated to 3 a.m. So those are my submissions on the relevance of geography of our venue. Second question from Councillor Farhana Thomas related to capacity. The reason we asked for the capacity, this used to have a capacity of 500 people, and that's within the conditions on the premises license within the pack of the original light bar. That was its natural capacity. Its fire safety capacity is higher at 550. What now happens is that even if we operate to capacity at 250, this is what happens. Firstly, the venue looks half empty, and that is bad for the customer experience. Secondly, once we hit capacity of 250, we have to turn people away. And those people, once again, do not go home to bed. They simply traipse through your special policy area to where the real hotspots are and go to other venues. And that is why we say it must be better to let those people into our venue rather than have to turn them away for them to go into the greater hotspots within your special policy area. Councillor, your third query related to bookings of the, in fact, first floor rather than second floor. And I think you expressed a concern about allowing alcohol onto that first floor. Could I just make this point clear? There is already a free-for-all license for alcohol on that first floor. In fact, there is a free-for-all, and I use that term lightly, alcohol license throughout the whole premises. There are no conditions that restrict restaurant use, save for caveats. There is a condition at the moment suggesting that there must be substantive food throughout the premises. So in suggesting that first floor is conditioned as a restaurant, that restricts what can go on there. And the savings we ask for corporate bookings or pre-booked is for this reason why we can't rely on tents. We need to be able, months ahead, to be able to book events. We cannot do that with corporations if we don't know whether we are or are not going to be allowed a temporary event notice or not. And that is why we can't rely on tents, because it doesn't allow us to plan our diary to the sort of extent that the companies we work with want to book. You know, Amazon, for example, want to book their Christmas party, and it can quite often be 6 or 9 months in advance. We can't accept that booking because we don't know if we're going to get a tent or somebody might object. And that's the reason.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any further comments, Councillor Farhana Thomas? Do you want to come back at all on any of that?
Oh, thanks, Chair. The only thing that I want to come back to is still the capacity, and just want to ask if we are mindful to agree or approve this and say we're not going to increase the capacity. Would that be something they would not we would be happy with?
And I'll just add to that as well, just on the
because these are two things: increasing the capacity. I know I heard what you've said, but we are predicting what will happen. This is, of course, we've seen evidence of how the premises have been running, as you mentioned, but we don't know what will happen with this increase in hours, what changes in behavior of patrons that will bring. So that would be, I'll still be very concerned. And the other thing to raise is this after the current license, I believe the condition 39 as expressed in the licensing authority, which put that at 10 o'clock. But it seems this is now 23 hours. Can I confirm that is what is proposing?
Yeah.
And if again, they will be happy to leave it as it is at 22 hours if we're mindful to approve any of these requests. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah. And I'd just like to reiterate those questions as well.
Let me deal with those one at a time. I appreciate this is not a horse trade hours for capacity, so I won't deal with it as such. But can I just preface what I'm about to say with this reality? My clients here are not in some luxurious position of having a viable business that just wants to make more money. They are not, I regret to say, anything like the energy companies. They are in dire straits here at the moment, and they have to consider whether they are able to continue this business and continue to employ their 65 staff. What they have asked for here is the minimum they believe to give them a chance to succeed. That's it. This is not luxuries. You, of course, have the power to say yes to part of this application and no to other parts of it. That's within your gift and within your power. But I do say this, that, for example, with the capacity, 550 is the fire safe capacity. We're asking for a relatively modest increase of just 75 people. Those people we would like in our premises. The alternative is not that those people aren't coming into your spa. They are. They're just being turned away at the door and traipsing off to other venues. We'd rather have, and it's got to be better for your cumulative impact, to have them into a venue where they would tend to depart away from the venue to Liverpool Street, in a venue that has a track record of not attracting troublemakers or being the source of trouble. That's got to be better than the same 75 extra people going off to other venues right in the middle of your spa. So we would like both. The reason we've asked for them, as I say, this is a matter of survival. This is not a luxury application my clients are making. So we would ask you to consider both. As for the outside area, at the moment there's conditions saying no drinks can go outside after 10 p.m. We're asking for that to be 11 p.m. The reason we're asking for that is because that now coincides with, as you know, the Business and Planning Act 2020 that allowed outdoor drinking originally during COVID, but now it seems it's going to be made near permanent for outside drinking to help the hospitality trade. That sets the time at 11 p.m. So we've tried to make it fit in with all the other legislation about outdoor drinking. I would say this, that while it's not a horse trade, if you were to say to my clients, we will grant you the additional capacity and grant you the extra 90 minutes, I am confident my clients would say, thank you so much, and we won't push the after 10 p.m. drinking outside.
Okay, Councillor Britannia Thomas, do you want to come back at all, or are you happy with that?
I'm happy with the response, but when we're still going to reveal the capacity. I'm not too sure what you think about that. I think 75 additional 75 people are coming in. It's quite a large number of people in the venue, and I still maintain that. So I'm not too sure what you think about that.
Well, I kind of corroborate that 75 is extra, but then I do also hear the 550 fire risk assessed capacity as well. So it's something we'll have to discuss, when we come to that. So we've had nearly 15 minutes of this discussion. I think we've had a good discussion. I hope everyone agrees, and would be happy to kind of move on to the final kind of remarks, essentially. So if I could,
Chair, before we go away, I want to ask the applicant about the capacity. Like I said, if we are mindful to approve this application, I want to hear from them around. I know Mr. Grant have said they wouldn't mind the 2200 hours of the outside drinking, but what about the capacity?
Councillor, if I could perhaps just point out, I'll put, you don't have to turn this up, but supplemental papers, page 114 for your note. That is the original license for the light bar. That's the one that allowed it to operate until 3 a.m. over a 14-year period between 2000 and 2014. And if you turn to condition 33 of that license, it sets the capacity of this venue at 500 people, 300 on the ground floor, 200 on the first floor. So that is the natural capacity of a venue of this size. What we're asking for is considerably less than that venue that was the historic late night licensed premises. So it's 325 against what had been there for some 14 years, which was 500. So we say that's considerably below its natural capacity.
Thank you. Sergeant Ryan.
Yes, thank you. I was actually just going to confirm whether the non-standard hours are going to be removed. I know we did discuss it in the meeting with the applicant, but I don't think it's been confirmed yet.
I'm just going to take instructions on that.
Would you mind repeating that question? Sorry, Kerry.
Yeah.
The hours. So the New Year's Eve, and I think you wanted an extra hour for time, correctly?
I'm really sorry, I can't hear the question.
I'm going to, Darren and Morton, if you look at your WhatsApp, I've repeated the question to you. Yes, I can confirm they would, if this is granted, they would agree to remove the non-standard hours application.
Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Okay, fantastic. So I think we should just go to concluding remarks then, please. Maybe 30 seconds each. So if I could start, please, with David.
Thank you very much, Chair. The representation, as I did say in my opinion submission, is mainly because the premises is within a special policy area. But I do recall when we first got this application and it first went to subcommittee, we were presented with an application from an applicant who did say that they would refurbish and operate this site to a very high standard, and I do believe that they have done that, and they do continue to do that. But obviously the premises is still within their special policy area, which is something that you will, of course, consider when making your application decision.
Yes. Okay. Do you have any thoughts about the capacity, David, just very briefly?
I think the additional capacity, obviously, that with the additional hours, I could understand the concerns about those. I think Shoreditch is very, very busy as it is already. So I do think that although in this particular premises there's a request for additional capacity, I think overall though in the grand scheme of things it maybe isn't so significant, but in the grand scheme of Shoreditch, should I say? Yeah. But in this particular site, obviously it's a percentage over above what they're able to do at the moment.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. If I could move to Sergeant Ryan, please, to sum up. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very similar, really. I haven't really got much more to add, just that it's in the SPA. We're supporting the policy and the hours. We haven't had any crime that's been directly attributed to the venue. They've consistently engaged with us throughout this application process. Our concerns are the hours and the additional people and the cumulative impact.
Okay, thank you for that. And then finally, Mr. Grant.
Councillors, it's in the interests of my clients, their commercial interests, to improve the situation in the Shoreditch Spa, because the sort of venue they run, it's not helpful for business to have customers walking through a war zone on a Friday or Saturday night. They believe, with good reason, that if this application for more flexibility is granted, they will be able to allow more of their customers to finish their night in our venue rather than to add to the problems in the central hotspots in Shoreditch. They believe they will not have to turn people away at the door because they've reached capacity of 250, which means, once again, that will reduce the impact in the hotspots. They are agreeing not only to add all of the 34 conditions on the existing premises license, but to add further robust controls. To, albeit with the caveats I've mentioned, to add a restaurant condition on the first floor, to add a really important last entry time of midnight, and that demonstrates that they're not trying to just get the last minute drinkers. They want faculty people to be able to sit down and have a third sitting in there. That's why they want this, and for people to finish the night and then go home, and that's likely to help. I've put in the very end of my written submissions, paragraph 33, what is now a famous quote, but he's famous in licensing worlds if you're a licensing geek, of District Judge Anderson. And this was a case where he looked at a brew dog up in Leeds, and he concluded in allowing an appeal against a refusal of a special policy application, it cannot be the policy of the cumulative impact policy to bring the Iron Curtain clanging down. I accept the committee and the police did their best, but the application of the policy was too rigid. They seem to take the view that man was made for the policy when the policy should be made for the man. Now, if you accept my apologies for the genderization of that particular observation of the district judge, the thought holds good. Your policy there is to promote the overall well-being of Shoreditch and its residents. The only residents who have expressed a view in this case support this application. This is a venue that ornaments Shoreditch, it doesn't damage it, and we ask for your help so they can survive.
Okay, great, thank you very much. And just on the issue of capacity, I mean, if that becomes a sticking point, just to ask you once again, would you consider, reducing that if needs be?
Councillor, as I've said, you have the power to do that, but I'm instructed to, my clients have asked for what they need. If we asked for what we wanted, we'd be here asking for 500, which was the age-old capacity. They've already taken a compromise and followed the advice of my solicitors by pitching it at 325, which is the lowest they need.
Okay. Amanda.
Yes, Chair. I just wanted to double check that you're clear as to with the hours. It's Monday to Sunday until 1:30. That's correct. And are they looking for any compromise on that at all?
I'm just going to take an instruction, Miss Nouth. One moment. So I'm just taking instructions, and I'll be able to answer you in a moment. Yes, my instructions are as follows: that if the extension were limited from Wednesday to Saturday nights, that may give them just enough.
Okay, so Monday and Tuesday would go back to 12, would it?
Yeah, well, in fact, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday would stay as it is. So licensable activities ending at midnight with kick out at midnight 30.
Yep.
And then the additional hours we've applied for with capacity just Wednesdays to Saturdays.
Yeah. And just to throw in the Wednesday there, would you be, how do they feel about reducing? I know they said they want the Wednesday at 1:30. Would they throw in 12 on a Wednesday as well? Just asking.
The answer is yes. They would do Thursday to Saturday is the information I've got.
Okay, well, that's definitely better. Thank you for that. Great. Any other comments anyone wants to make before we sort of wind up? I think there's no more business here. So thank you everyone for being on this. And again, sorry for the overrun. It's good to give you a good hearing, but sometimes it means we overrun a little bit. So thank you to everyone. So if I could ask you to leave, decision will be sent within the next 5 working days, and you'll get a skeleton decision be available from tomorrow morning. So thank you very much.
Councillors, thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Take care. Okay. Do we need a comfort break? I suspect we maybe do. And sorry, apologies. Is it Black Rock? I know you've been waiting for ages on this one. Do we need a comfort break?
Yes, I will say yes, but I don't know what order we want, but I need to go to the bathroom.
Okay. Sorry, BlackRock. If we could just reconvene in 5 minutes. I know you've been waiting all afternoon. All I can do is apologize. Sometimes these things just go on and on. So yeah, if we could reconvene in 5 minutes, that would be perfect. And thank you for your patience.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks.
I'm presuming you put your cameras back on when you come on, so we can see you. Great, thank you.
Chair, I should clarify, I'm just observing the hearing. I've not made a representation on this application.
Okay, yep, just checking.
I'm here, Chair.
Oh, brilliant, thank you. Great. Okay, so I think we've just got other persons objecting today, haven't we? It looks like a lot of the other objections have been withdrawn from the police, I see, and environmental health as well, and also the Environmental Health Authority, the Environmental Protection Team. Okay, so we can move on then to the new premises license, Black Rock Rooms, Basement 9, Christopher Street, London, EC2A. If I could ask the Acting Principal Licensing Officer to outline the report, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the last item we are going to consider is for an application for a premises license under Section 17 of the Licensing Act 2003 for Black Rock Rooms, 9 Christopher Street, for recorded music, late night refreshment, and to authorize the supply of alcohol for consumption on and off the premises, as stated within the report. Representation remains only from the other persons, and we have received some additional information from the applicant, which has been circulated. I have nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. And if I could ask the applicant, I think it's Thomas Ask, is that right? Or Tristan Stevenson?
It will be mainly me, but Tristan Major, if that's okay, if he has anything to add.
Okay, Thomas, fire away. You've got 5 minutes.
Yeah, sure. I think furtherly, it's important to obviously recognise that we have read all of the objections that were sent over to to understand the points behind them and obviously address them accordingly in a real objective way. And I think one of the most important things to understand in the application is that whilst it is of course on paper a new application, the premise itself not only has held a licence for 28 years, as we understand it, as confirmed by our landlord, still our landlord. He built the building in 1994 and was granted a licence since then. He took on the premise in 2016 with a licence that was till 1 AM at that time. And in 2017, we successfully applied to extend it until 2 AM with no objections from any of the authorities nor from any residents. And so, whilst it is a new application, the reality is the reason we don't have a licence today is that due to an administrative error, we basically didn't transfer the licence to our new operating company. And so the licence that we're applying for is a direct mirror of the licence that we previously held and operated up until very recently. Black Rock is a 26 all-seated capacity venue in the basement at 9 Christopher Street and operates as a specialist whisky bar and has done for the last 6 years. Since then, we've won 4 years consecutively the best specialist bar in the UK, and consider ourselves with an immaculate record as far as the licensing objectives and all of the licensing authorities, which is shown by the fact that all of the conditions we've agreed to and any objections from the authorities have been withdrawn based on that. Finally, the only thing that I would really want to say in addition to that is, of course, as per the previous hearing, this is very important to us, this particular hearing, and that we are, we're forced to not trade any longer, having been there for 6 years. We've had 2 years of, as you can appreciate, an incredibly torrid time where we've lost 80% of our business, leaving us with what is now the only licensed site that we have at Black Rock at 9 Christopher Street. Prior to that, Tristan and I have operated over 10 licensed premises across the UK over the last 12 years, including 2 within Hackney, in fact 3 within Hackney, 2 on Christopher Street and 1 on Worship Street. And in that time, you'll notice that there has not been a single incident or issue, and our record within that jurisdiction is complete. Finally, are awaiting to hear or not after this hearing they will have a job. Quite literally straight after this hearing, to let them know whether or not we are to let them go or not. As well as that, of course, we're now our only licensed menu. Both Tristan and my livelihoods hang in the balance here effectively. So, you know, what we're asking for really is a pragmatic view on the license application based on the history behind previous licenses that have been held and the unfortunate circumstance surrounding the fact that the license wasn't transferred. And that's all I can ask really, so thank you.
Yep. Any points of clarity, Councillor Fajana Thomas? I know you had an issue about the recorded music. I mean, why did they want that? Maybe you want to explore that a bit.
That's thanks, Chair. That's just the point of clarity. To be honest, I do hear that this kind of mirror the application, the previous application there, but in the previous application, there's no recorded music, and I just want to understand, is that bringing DJ in, or what is going to happen with that? Thanks.
And late night refreshment, I believe, as well.
And the late night refreshment as well. At the moment, you don't have late night refreshment, do you? It's just alcohol. So, which I remember reading the current condition 35. It only said alcohol can only be delivered to a residential or business address. So if you are now asking for refreshment, then that would need to become alcohol and meal, just to clarify that,
so,
rather than just alcohol.
No, sorry, apologies. Sorry, Councillor. Just to address firstly you are finished. Okay, sorry, thank you. Firstly, to address the music, we've always operated with ambient background music, which is the way that we've always had our venue operate. I raised to Senior Licensing Officer Sanaria Hussain that when we applied for this, it was my understanding, actually, to be fair, that there was background music was allowed within our license. To be clear, we won't be having bands. Our intention is to play ambient music off a digital system to be a background to the guests that we have in. As we've said, you know, we only hold 26 people, all of which are seated, and the atmosphere within the venue is very much one as though you were in a restaurant. The late night refreshing provision really, again, was hours, again, to promote you know, responsible drinking and the licensing objectives. And so it wasn't really something that we intended the late night refreshment and food element to be something to take away at all. The off license, purely to be straight, the off license was already there when we took the license over from the previous licensee. It is something that is very rarely used. That said, obviously the conditions of the current hospitality industry have dictated that it became a very valuable asset during COVID, when we weren't able to actually provide beverages to guests that were coming into our bar. And in fact, you know, a big part of how we've managed to survive the last 2 to 2.5 years, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
Thanks for that clarification. Yeah, that answered my question. All I'm asking, I know what you've just said, is when if we're mindful to grant this application, that condition 35 would need to reflect that, which would be alcohol and meal or food or refreshment, whatever it is, can only be delivered to a residential or business. You might want to, I'm not too sure if you got the condition in front of you to check. Amanda, thanks. You want to come in?
Yes, Councillor Fajana Thomas, I just wanted to ask you if you'd like to clarify with the applicant whether or not it was meant to be with a delivery service or not.
Yes, please. I have it here to clarify that. Is it with delivery service, and what mode of delivery would that be to the premises?
Yeah, do you want to come back on that, Thomas?
Sure. Again, you know, do appreciate that this off sales and delivery to premise is an incredibly small percentage of what we do. The main way in which this off license is used within our premise right now, or very recently, is that we also host tasting sessions, organized tasting sessions for corporate clients and for groups of friends, guests that want to come in and learn more about whiskey. And what we do, or did, at the end of those tastings was that we would give them a small sample of 200 millilitres of a blended whiskey that they themselves had blended to take away in a goodie bag with them as part of the end of that experience. So, you know, we are not intending to be having delivery drivers parked outside shipping alcohol all across Hackney, nor will it be very regularly that anybody would take anything off site. The condition really was to allow us, once these people that had joined the tasting had blended their own whiskey, that they could take a sample of that blend with them home to enjoy at home and talk to their friends about. That is how we use it, really. Other than that, it doesn't really get used.
Yeah. But we have to be cautious, obviously, because you know, if you pass the license on to somebody else at a later date, then you know, and you have all these things on there, then they can do all that, and then we end up with a problem. So, Corinne, you wanted to come in very briefly. I was going to bring you in anyway, because I think we can move on. I'm happy. Corinne, I've got on my list 4 other persons, and obviously you're the only one that's here at the moment. But I presume, I mean, are you in contact with the others? I mean, can you speak for them, kind of?
I don't know who they are actually, because I can't read their names on you. But
yeah, Stephen Berg, Matt Johnson, Nicoletta Vogue Wrightson, and Nick Wrightson.
Well, all I can say is I'm a resident, and I objected to the application.
Mm-hmm.
I do hear what the applicant is saying, that it's an existing ongoing license, etc. But on the other hand, the fact that there is an application here is an opportunity for residents to raise their concern, because things over the years, things have changed in Shoreditch. They are getting worse and worse. And that's why there is a special policy area. I know this is not in the spa, but it's near it. And we do suffer from the cumulative impact of, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., etc., of people going out in the street. And the applicant is saying that their livelihood is hanging in the balance, and I appreciate that, but the residents' livelihood is also very important around here, because residents also do create jobs, do have jobs in the area, and need to be able to sleep. So this is the balance in question, and that's why I think a lot of residents were objecting against this at 2 a.m. Late hours. And so there is an opportunity for us to mitigate possible public nuisance and crime disorder and so on. You say that the off license is rarely used, but on the other hand, you say that during the pandemic, it was basically your survival was due to the off license. So there is also a little bit of a potential that the off license may grow, may become, a very important part of the business. And as was mentioned earlier, that the off license could, selling alcohol off, to be taken out, could also, if it's passed on to another license owner, could also become quite an important part of the business. So we can't just look at your premises as they are at the moment, but if a license is granted, it's basically forever. So this is what residents are up against in the area, and I wanted to voice that on. There quite many residents have objected for these reasons.
Okay, thank you very much, Corinne, for that. Councillor Jana Thomas, you want to come in?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Corinne, for being here. And just want to find out how, in terms of these premises, whether you live very close to the premises or not, And secondly, whether you've had issues from these premises in the past, for instance, nuisance, noise, or anything of sort. If you're mindful to.
No,
Thank
not personally, not from this particular premises, but it is more a question of, you know, the whole area, the cumulative impact of people in the surrounding streets throughout, you know, after midnight is quite horrendous for residents. So given that the premises are very much within the walking circles of where I live, this is the concern. Thank you.
Okay, Thomas, do you want to come back in? I mean, I think we can just move straight into the discussion phase now. So, Thomas, do you want to come back on that?
I mean, firstly, I want to obviously thank you, Corinne, for raising those. And we do obviously, both Tristan and I do understand, you know, Shoreditch is an area we've operated in there for 10 years or more now in various venues. The only thing I would say really, and I do understand the point around once the license being granted and it can be moved on to other operators, etc., is that, of course, you've made it clear that we've never caused any direct impact to yourself. And in fact, you know, the licensing authorities will know that we've actually made no direct impact to any residents or any local community at all. There have never been any complaints made about our particular venue. And whilst I appreciate that that doesn't protect you against future operators, you know, we have a very long lease there and intend to stay there for a very long time and operate there. The off license and the COVID, the sort of, I guess, pivoting of COVID, obviously, you know, this has impacted everybody. However, our bread and butter, you know, our base industry experience is not in off-trade sales. Our base interest is in generating and creating amazing hospitality experiences. And we've done that, as I've said, in many, many occasions across London and across the UK, you know, with the best interest at heart and with the local residents at heart, to give them what we believe should be an incredible experience within hospitality in Shoreditch. So, but I do thank you, Corinne, for, you know, bringing that up as well and you know, coming on.
Yeah, I would like to ask a couple of questions. The first one is just to clarify if you're happy with condition 35, alcohol with a meal. So you need to answer that one. And then the next one is condition 37, no more than 5 people smoking in your designated smoking area. And I'm not sure if it's clear what the capacity of the venue, maybe I missed it. So what's the capacity of your venue? And do you have a kind of dispersal policy in place to ask people when they leave? And then finally, I think your old license on a Wednesday was till 1, but the new, what you're asking for now is to 12 on a Wednesday. Is that correct? So there's 4 questions there.
I will try to address those in reverse order. Firstly, the application that you've got is the one that we would wish to be granted with a 12 o'clock on the Wednesday. The dispersal method, as I've said, the way that we, so the capacity that we have 26 seats. That is our capacity. It's obviously a very small venue with 1 entrance, 1 exit. The 5 people outside smoking, I think we've already agreed to as a condition, which is why it was removed as a condition in the first place. And dispersal wise, you know, our main trading hours basically are between 7 p.m. and 10 to 11 p.m. We do have people that come in later, and it's one of the main reasons that we really want to retain that license. And it's that what we tend to find is that we get a select handful of people that want somewhere late at night, not a nightclub, but somewhere to actually sit down and enjoy a quiet drink as opposed to going to a high capacity venue. As I've said, you know, we are a very intimate, very service driven, small venue. And so, you know, dispersal for us in the early hours is never such of a problem because it will wind down naturally to, you know, half a dozen to 10 people in that venue towards the end of the evening, which, you know, is almost half of our capacity and the beauty of having such a small venue, I guess. Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Yep, I think it does, yep. Councillor Regina Thomas, do you want to come back with some queries?
Chair, thanks very much. I'm okay with the question that I've heard.
Yep. It's just the answer, Thomas, about the condition 35, alcohol with a meal. you need to work if you're happy with that or not.
To be clear, this is in relation to off sales.
Off sales, yeah.
Yes, we are perfectly happy with that as a condition for off sales only. Yeah.
Brilliant, excellent. Okay, I mean, Corinne, do you want to come back with anything? I mean, I'm pretty content. I think I've heard enough, but obviously this is an opportunity for you within the discussion to come back again if you want to.
No, I've said what I needed to say, and the other letters of objections are along similar points.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. I mean, I think if everyone's happy, we had a reasonable discussion. I hope you're content with that, Thomas and Tristan. I think Councillor Fajana Thompson and I have heard enough from Corinne and yourselves to be able to make a decision. So I would ask you please to leave, and thank you for attending. And you will basically, you will be sent a decision within 5 working days, and you will get a skeleton. It'll be available from the licensing service tomorrow morning. So again, thank you very much. We will go. Amanda, you want to come in quickly?
Sorry, I do apologise, Chair. Sorry. I just wanted to clarify, just to make it very clear that there's not because they don't do takeaways. They're obviously not looking for any hot food conditions or anything like that. But would the applicant be agreeable to having a condition to cover those promotional drinks, alcoholic drinks that are being taken off the premises, so that we have that protected? So either we could amend condition 35 to include that promotional drink or from the events, or we can agree separately another condition to cover that.
I'll chime in since I haven't said anything. Hello.
Sorry, and the other thing was, Chair, I don't know if you considered whether or not dispersal policy would be necessary.
I mean, it doesn't sound to me like they need one, because
okay,
the venue's quite small. I don't know if Councillor Fajana Thomas agrees with me on that one.
Yeah, okay.
They said the capacity is 30. I read here 25 to 30. That's why I thought about like the chair said, that is quite a small premise in terms of numbers of patrons.
But obviously, just be mindful of all that stuff when you're operating, I would suggest. I think the wording
probably what I'll be saying is, I'm not sure if they have proper signage there. Do you have an SIA on your door? They're not required because of the numbers. Is that right, Amanda?
Yeah, I suppose it would probably be. I mean, I suspect they probably want risk assessed SIA if they have it.
If they have, okay. Just to be sure that when people are leaving the premises or information about.
Did you ask Chair about this? About dispersal from the premises, just to make sure that there's any issue.
No, we did cover that.
Probably to ask that again.
Just
Chair,
to clarify, I just want to make sure you're satisfied in your mind.
Yeah, just to clarify that and ask whether they've got, when people are coming out, do you have a door person by the door, or how does that look like?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So we obviously have all of the necessary signage outside in relation to our residents to make sure that our guests are leaving quietly and dispersing properly. We also have, as agreed with the police, door supervisors on the 3 busiest nights of the week, which, let's face it, aren't that busy, of Thursdays, Fridays and Saturdays. Tuesdays and Wednesdays, or Mondays, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, in reality, we never have more than 10 to 15 people in the venue at any one time. And that tends to die out quite early, around 10 p.m. So again, I think it's more of a pragmatic approach to dispersal than one that needs to be, in my opinion, unless you feel otherwise, enforced just purely because of the number of people that are in the venue. Obviously all of the team are trained and well versed in the necessity of but as I've said, on the busier nights, we'll never be busier than 26, 27 people in there. We have door supervisors on for the duration of the evening to ensure that they leave quietly and orderly, basically.
Thank you for that. And Suba, you want to come in?
Yes, Chair. I just want to confirm that there is a condition regarding the door supervisor, condition number 18, which says there should be one SI door supervisor from after 8 p.m. from Thursday to Saturday. So I just don't know whether the members want to amend it if they decide to grant to us Wednesday to Thursday. Thank you, Chair.
I think Wednesday's going to be it's just to midnight, isn't it? Wednesday.
Oh, sorry, Chair. Yeah, then absolutely, then that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So I think
That's
that's
the
probably
condition
fine.
of the door supervisor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks.
yes,
So
but
you
Chair,
do the condition do say to have at least one SIA by the door.
Yeah.
Yes. So they do.
Condition
Yeah.
number 18.
Thanks.
on the busy
Yes.
nights, yeah.
On a busy night, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thursdays,
so
Fridays, and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so just confirming whether or not the applicant will be agreeable to a condition to cover the promotional alcoholic drinks that they're giving to the customers to take off the premises.
Yeah, it's just the wording. It's not really.
I won't be able to. Yeah, I won't be able to give you the exact wording this minute. But
No, but what I mean is, we need to get. You're saying promotional drink. They might, Tristan and Thomas. It might not be that kind of. It might not be a promotional kind of thing. It's more to do with.
With the events, it's an event, isn't it? A tasting session.
It's a masterclass on whiskey, where the customer takes home something they've made themselves.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, we need.
Right, so give us some wording for that then. What is it? Is it a promotional thing or a gift? It's a gift or something.
Well, the thing is, I don't think it's a gift. But the thing is, Chair, if it would be possible for us to agree the exact wording with the applicant after, but if they would be agreeable initially now for something at least to be, that we can add to the conditions, because I think it's important to cover it.
Thomas.
Okay.
I think it's important just to emphasise that it was used as an example to showcase how the off licence has been used and is used regularly, as opposed to us offering a condition on the licence itself. And I'm not saying that is, a make or break, but it was basically to show how 99% of the time that is used. If it is a case of it causing unnecessary delays in the issuing of the licence or any problems, then we can discuss further. But personally, as I've said, I think we would need to look at the wording, but as I've explained, most importantly to us, really at this stage, and I have to be very straight with you, is how expedient the process is in terms of being able to, keep our staff employed and keep open as soon as we can.
Okay. Yeah. How many events like that do you have?
Well, we tend to hold one tasting a week, with normally around 10 guests, right. and that is it. It normally happens on a Saturday afternoon at about 3 o'clock before we open, and tends to be groups for birthdays. It tends to be corporates. They go through a 2-hour tasting and blending session, and they walk away with a small sample. Right. I have to say, again, unless it was a condition that was unnegotiable, I would be reluctant to remove the ability for us to sell. For example, if somebody wanted to buy to take home a bottle of, say, an independent bottling of whiskey that we have that's only available within our particular premise, it would be a shame for us to have our hands tied in our ability to do that, given that we have been able to do that for the last 6 years. But as I've said, in the grand scheme of our operation, I'm talking about 0.02% of our sales, less than that, would contribute to what we're talking about here. We are a bar. It's that.
Councillor Fitzgerald Thomas.
No, it's just to come back to Thomas. I think what we are saying, you already have condition 35 with the alcohol, off-sales alcohol. And I don't think Amanda is suggesting to remove that. No. It's in addition. So you already have that condition there. This is in addition to this condition, just to make that explicit. If that clarify. Sorry, Amanda, you want to?
Yeah, all I was going to say is if members are not minded, because if it's such a small sample, I wasn't sure if it was like a bigger, like the small bottles of, I don't know, do you call it 500 millilitres or something, or 250? I don't know, but I don't know how big it was. But if it is a really tiny, small sample bottle, if members are not concerned about that, then that's fine. I was more worrying about whether or not it could be construed as, as off sales of some kind, and I didn't want it to get mixed up with anything else. So we don't have to condition it, but it's at the discretion of members. Thank you.
Okay, Thomas, do you want to come back, and then Susan? Thomas, you had your hand up. Was that a legacy hand, or seems to have gone?
He might have gone.
Frozen. Is he frozen?
I think he's frozen, yeah.
Councillor Fajana Thomas, do you want to come in? Thanks, Corinne.
Thank you.
So I just want to say there is the alcohol at 35 and probably a 35B or on the other side, just to include, because what you have here said alcohol was about alcohol delivery to residential and businesses and not to a public place. Because actually this will cover you as well if you have that condition in place, which says that allows alcohol takeaway on tasting days or when there are events. If you know what I mean.
We're happy with that. That's
so
fine.
We're not taking that condition, the 35 off. It's an addition.
That's fine. We're happy with that.
So, Thomas, just to clarify this condition 35 again, alcohol with meal. I mean, because you said yes to that. Is that going to be a problem, or is that okay?
Well, it is now in the context of the fact that it is attached to these special events, yes, because of course these people won't be taking a boxed meal with them as they leave a whiskey tasting.
No, so we need to maybe think about that, maybe Councillor Jana Thomas, because obviously, they wouldn't be taking a major meal away with them with a sample.
I think
again, it's about clarification on what you were doing. If the food is here, because previously you only do alcohol and the conditions mention alcohol, but if you are now introducing refreshment meal, that's why we are suggesting that need to be added to it.
Yeah.
Again, and looking at this is actually for your own good. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, the fact is, it wasn't on your license before, but you were still doing food inside, kind of thing. Now it's it's going to be on there, so that's why we're sort of questioning it, kind of thing, and making it such that it's basically there and on your license, and you can do it. You're not doing anything illegal; it's all fine. So that's kind of why
which means previously you're not supposed to be doing food or meal because that was not.
Can I just maybe if I just paint the picture as clearly and concisely as possible about what we want to be able to do, and perhaps you can advise on whether or not the conditions are right for us or whether we need to change it.
Yeah,
we want to open as a whiskey bar. With 99.9% of what we're doing is selling whiskey, with a bit of beer, and we have been offering food with that as well. We're talking about small plates, little bits, not meals by no stretch of the imagination. In addition to that, we would like the freedom to be able to sell the odd bottle of whiskey if someone wants to buy it. We do have really rare whiskies in stock at times, and sometimes being in a location, we'll get people coming along who want to spend the money and take a bottle home. And in addition to that, we do these masterclasses, which we've already gone over, where people make their own product and they take a little bit away with them as a sample. No food involved in that, and no plans to kind of deliver food to people either. It's primarily whiskey and whiskey education.
So maybe we could leave it where Amanda can work with you on the wording around some of this stuff, kind of offline, if that's all right.
That's sure, yeah.
I think that's what I would suggest, Chair, because we've now learned more about what you were trying to do. We can work with.
Yeah.
Yeah, just, I mean, I know we've met, Tom's mentioned this a couple of times already, but just to reiterate though, we are really quite desperate to get open again. We're under threat of losing all of our team, who obviously are currently not unemployed, but are not getting paid. So we really need to move as quickly as possible on it. Understanding that obviously we're not the only licensed or unlicensed, as it happens, premise that you guys are dealing with.
Yeah, fantastic.
Chair, just to clarify then, that it's not substantial meals that they're having. If they did have it, it's only these small plates of which might be appetizers or something.
Yeah, what we're trying to do, Amanda, as you know, is basically protect the license being passed on to somebody else, so it can be used for like a kind of full-on off sales type situation.
Yes,
that's what
but
we're
it's
trying
not
to
a
avoid.
restaurant.
So,
That's the only thing we just wanted to clarify for the record, that it's not a restaurant, so
Yeah.
we have to be careful. But don't worry, we won't, Mr. Ask, we won't add things to your license which are not necessary. So please don't worry. It's just that we're just making sure everything's protected so that you can do things without being told, oh, because it will just take a local resident possibly to say, look, you're maybe not doing X, Y, and Z in accordance with the terms of your license. So we're just trying to make sure everything is covered. But if it's not necessary, we won't condition it. So don't worry.
Okay, thank you.
Fantastic. So I think we've reached the end of this one, I believe, unless anybody got anything else to say. So apologies again, you guys, for having to wait for so long for this. That's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. You know, these go on for a long time and you happen to be third on the list. But thank you for your patience. I wish you well, and we will make a decision, and you will get, you'll be sent a decision within 5 working days, and you'll get a skeleton decision on the phone, essentially, from the licensing service tomorrow, if you call them up.
Okay, thank
So
you.
best of luck.
All right, thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.